There's a story that's been unfolding somewhere in your chart about dreaming new timelines and new ways of being. How can you free your imagination and allow ideas to find you? What if these aren't ideas but prophecies? What if it's your future self screaming from an alternative universe for you to dream bigger and bravely and to finally take that small risk? Why do I say small, not big risk? I say small because the final lunar eclipse in Pisces, until another 18 years or so, is being opposed by Mercury in Virgo. Big dreams actualizing require many small steps. It requires monitoring the stories in your head that echo the programming you've been socialized into that attacks the dreaming creative mind. I've been into dream symbolism lately, and often I realize the unconscious mind dreams up characters and images that are sometimes confusing, but often it's our inner dialogue that have turned itself into a shape and physique. If you see a character in your dream, even one that you realize from your daily life, TV, whatever, or maybe someone you actually know, it's not really about them necessarily and obviously what they represent. We hear this a lot in dreams. Like, it's not the person, it's what they represent. But stay with me. If you see like some kind of character in your dream, like being horrible to you, and again, follow your own instinct here. This is not like a rule or anything that I'm saying. I'm just sharing my own observations. If you see a character being horrible to you in a dream, it may not be the actual character or person, but an amalgamation of the influences in your life, historically, present time, regardless of when in time, that have been threatened or in opposition to your organic life, you know, your dreaming self that carries the creative and sort of magnanimous aspect of you that knows that it's part of everything. The conversation between the dreaming self, the rational mind, and our programming began, in a very specific way, of course. This conversation, I think, is always up for all of us at all times. But there's specific ways in which this lexicon has been up since September 18th, 2024, when the first lunar eclipse in Pisces happened. It was a partial lunar eclipse, and then the total lunar eclipse happened in 2025. And then now we're having a final partial lunar eclipse in Pisces on the 28th of August. So I'm going to be going back and forth between the 18th of September 2024 and the current eclipse that's happening now on August 28th, 2026, just to kind of cross-reference. And also, I don't know about you, but I find doing a post-mortem, like digging up old transits, very useful for like learning and growth and just being able to trace what you've learned or what's changed. Because when we're in something, often we're not designed to see the totality. When we can never see the totality, we're not God, but we can't see the outer layers of the topography, if you like, of the thing that we're moving through. So I'm not a huge fan of astrology that only focuses future, next week transit after, transit, what's happening next week, what's happening next month ahead. We always hear a month ahead horoscope, a week ahead, everything's ahead. And astrology is very futuristic. Astrology is a way of mapping time, and it started off, whether modern astrologers are comfortable with it or not, astrology's base is about prediction, looking into the future so that we can not be ready for it, so that we can, this is my interpretation, and I hope maybe that's the spirit of it. I don't know what ancient people were thinking 3,000-4,000 years ago, and astrology was practiced differently in many different parts of the world, from what we know as the Middle East today, Africa, the Greco-Romans, like it was just different, right? But my guess is to live more in alignment rather than controlling the future. But God knows many people use it to try and control the future, which is impossible anyway. But obviously, I think that's just a shadow of astrology itself. And I have no shame in saying that as a practicing astrologer myself, because we have to see the full spectrum on how a tool, because that's how I see astrology, a tool, and how a tool can be used. So I'm just going away from my cosmic love letter for a second to just input this as it's coming to me now, because I think going to the past, and we don't have to keep digging the past and life that's already gone just for the sake of it, or drowning in it, or getting stuck in it. Again, same shadow as looking only at the future. Going too much into the past kind of robs us of dreaming about the future, which we can create, you know? But I think looking at the past in conjunction with the future allows us to not repeat certain timelines, to not repeat certain things that we'd rather like keep in the past. I think studying the past actually becomes a way of safeguarding the future. And it's a way of getting to know ourselves more deeply. Astrologers are human too. Even the most gifted astrologer is experiencing the transits alongside the people that they're divining this information for, right? So I'm talking to you about the lunar eclipse in Pisces, but there's certain things about this lunar eclipse that I might not see until next year when I look back at it. I might not see it until 18 years when we're going through another lunar eclipse in Pisces, and I look back at this one and I'm like, okay, so that's what it was about. And all timelines are valid. It doesn't matter when something brings its gift to you. This is the humility I think we need as astrologers and as lovers of the cosmos, is that we don't get to control this shit. We don't get to choose when the information comes to us. We just have to be listeners. And, you know, in ancient times, Mercury was the ruler of, I still consider Mercury the ruler of astrology. I think Uranus is a co-ruler of astrology. Mercury is about listening, not just speaking. You have to listen. And Mercury goes through different phases in the year. And there's a whole portion of its phase that's deep in the underground where you're listening, right? And if you see people who have Mercury in water signs, Mercury aspecting Pluto, aspecting the moon, these people are listening to what's beneath the words. And there's a humility that one has to employ, right? And Mercury is going to be in Virgo during this upcoming lunar eclipse. And Virgo pays attention to details. Mercury is in domicile, unexalted in Virgo, but it's listening. This is what I keep coming back to. It's listening. So wrapping up this little tangent about not just looking at the future as a way to, because I think it's a very colonial thing, right? Because time is a resource, and we've seen how systems of oppression treat resources that come from the earth or wherever. Colonization, right? And I don't mean coloniality in terms of a country invading another country. I mean coloniality as an anti-life spirit that seeks to extract resources in a way that pays no respect to the source that actually inhabits the resource itself. And I think sometimes we can be colonial when it comes to wisdom traditions like astrology, in terms of trying to mine the future, like mining gold that doesn't yet belong to us, right? Time has its own consciousness, and it arrives with its gift and its gold when it wants to. And that's what I mean by humility. We have to, as much as we are skilled in these tools, we have to understand our limits. We have to know that there's an aspect of the future that's always going to be a mystery. I just needed to say that. I needed to get that off my chest. Okay, let's move on. So why I brought that up is that I'm going to be going to the past and kind of juxtaposing it with the final lunar eclipse now that we're having in this Pisces Virgo axis story that began on the 18th of September 2024, when the first partial lunar eclipse happened in the sign of Pisces that kicked off this eclipse series in the axis point of Pisces and Virgo. Let's go. So the first lunar eclipse in Pisces happened at around about the 25-degree mark, and it was hanging around very close to Uranus. The only difference is that it was sextiling Uranus, because Uranus was at the later degrees, around about 27 degrees of Taurus. So the sun was trining Uranus then, and then the moon was sextiling Uranus, which is very interesting because Uranus is back again, but it's in a square with the moon, not a sextile, meaning that there's an urgency now. Sextiles is when there's like a creative spark happens, right? You don't yet feel compelled in an agitating way to take action when two planets are sextiling, but the idea is there. It's like a invigorating idea, but you're like playing around with it. It's like a playful interaction, which still has some stimulus. You know, sextiles still have a stimulus, but it's playful. It's a bantering back and forth. And then when the planets reach a square, it's urgent. It's agitating. It's conflictual. In my opinion, squares are quite erotic. They create that friction that happens between two colliding things. And then from that friction, something has to emerge. New life has to emerge. It's like when two things clash and then there's a firework, right? The volcano erupts. The heat is fully coming on live. I'll get onto the current lunar eclipse in a bit, but that's just one thing that I've noticed is Uranus is present in both the beginning of this series of eclipses and in the ending. So just important to note as I move ahead. And also, in the first lunar eclipse in Pisces in September 2024, Pluto and Neptune, along with Uranus as mentioned, was also hanging around at the latter degrees of their sign. The beginning of the nodal story in the Pisces-Virgo axis brought to us an ending. We were all in a kind of in-between, fogginess as this first eclipse. The sun was opposed by Neptune, which was at 28 degrees of Pisces. Mercury was also being opposed by Saturn, also in Pisces, but at the 15-degree range. But this fog was not meaningless because there was also an Earth grand trine between Pluto, Uranus, and the Sun, which was gifting us the purging that was needed to release old structures. These are structures that informed our very practical lives, how we make money, where we live in terms of our residence, the kind of residence we live in, what we eat, what we put on, etc. These foundations changing didn't just point to us losing things and that was it, but it was a portal for a new foundation to emerge. That was in 2024. So the question now becomes, over the last 2 years, what has been released on a foundational level? And what are you so excited to start that you feel like a mad scientist on the verge of blowing up your laboratory? This full moon and the final lunar eclipse in Pisces on August the 28th is squaring Uranus, which is in the sign of Gemini. Uranus is restless and has been ready for something new like yesterday. Uranus is also squaring Mercury during this lunar eclipse happening on the 28th of August. So our minds are being bombarded with insights and downloads. This is heightened as Mercury's combust the sun. The sun and Mercury meet up in a cazimi the day before the eclipse on the 27th of August. And a cazimi is an Arabic word meaning the heart of the sun. The new world is already here. The gloomy astrological weather of the first lunar eclipse in Pisces in September 2024 is finished. I don't use the word gloomy as a value judgment. It's just the opposite of clear and illuminating. Pay attention to your dreams, I'd say, around this eclipse. There may be puzzle pieces to questions that felt stuck or unclear since September 2024. This lunation is ending a story wherever you have Pisces in your chart, but it's also gifting the blueprint of your new beginning. Pisces speaks in symbols and codes. This blueprint might not appear to you in a Word document typed up in Times New Roman, font size 12. It may arrive to you when you're not searching for it, when you're sky gazing, meditating, journaling, walking or sleeping. Keep your psychic doors open. Something will come knocking. That's the gift of this eclipse, and take your time with it if that's in resonance. This is not the usual eclipse advice, but with Mercury squaring Uranus, if it feels aligned for you to take inspired steps towards points of illumination quicker than your usual pace or what's advised for eclipses, trust your inner guidance. Eclipses are very numinous and no amount of planning can override the hands of fate. Take the pressure off and be very in tune with your gut. And this can be exciting too, because you may get a lick, even if it's not a full taste of a timeline you've been dreaming up since 2024 or perhaps since 2008. Why 2008? Because that's when the lunar eclipse in Pisces happened before the current cycle that's ending. Finally, Jupiter is also trining Saturn retrograde. And I think Jupiter is bringing grace and the spaciousness needed for you to forgive maybe past versions of yourself or parts of your ego for maybe underestimating yourself or not trying new things even when your blood was boiling for it, for not knowing how to protect yourself from people who didn't want you to shine, for not protecting your creative self and dreams from those whose misery wanted your company. Jupiter can signify forgiveness because it's tuned into the frequency of hope and abundance. There's always more life and blessings. Contrary to popular opinion, Saturn isn't just about structure and material reality. It's the void and place of nothingness. It's the ground beneath the soil where everything's pitch black. Saturn retrograde in Aries is showing us the dark places we've buried our selfhood, autonomy, and zest for life. The place where our instincts were dulled so that we could survive the places that required us to be half of ourselves. In traditional astrology, Saturn governs death and the thresholds between life and the realities of being mortal beings. So something is emerging from the dead to claim its name, to be known and respected for the life-affirming role that it came here to fulfill. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'm very grateful for you to be here. If you're interested in how any of this lands in your chart, or just curious in general about your cosmic blueprint, I am open for one-to-one natal chart readings, and I would love to hear from you. You can find all the details to my offerings on my website, which is linked down below, but for ease and convenience, it's literally mayamariam.com, MAIAMARIAM.com, and every bit of detail that you might need will be on there. Otherwise, you can just shoot me an email, and I will see you in the next love letter.